What happens when the pulpit turns on its own blood? When the voice millions follow for guidance suddenly draws a line in the sand, not against strangers, but against family. Pastor Noel Jones, one of the most respected and commanding figures in modern ministry, has just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. He's publicly rebuked his own sister, the iconic untouchable Grace Jones, accusing her of living a life that defies everything he stands for. The result? A firestorm of controversy that's got the church community in disbelief and the entertainment world on edge. This isn't just a disagreement. It's a family feud playing out on a spiritual battlefield. Grace Jones, known for breaking rules, bending gender, and redefining pop culture, now finds herself at the center of a very public, very personal call-out. And the question everyone's asking, is this about faith or is it something deeper? In this video, we unpack the tension, the history, and the fallout of one of the most shocking moments in both gospel and entertainment history. Buckle up, because this goes way beyond sibling rivalry. This is spiritual warfare at the family table. But what Pastor Noel Jones just said, it's the kind of truth bomb that shakes both the pulpit and the stage, and it's left everyone stunned. If you know anything about Pastor Jones, you know he doesn't speak lightly. As the longtime leader of the City of Refuge Church and a towering figure in modern ministry, he's built a reputation for speaking boldly, no sugarcoating, no political safe zones. But this time, the thunder of his words didn't strike politicians, pop culture trends, or moral decline in society. This time, it landed right at his own front door. Because this time, the fire was aimed at his sister, the one and only Grace Jones. Yes, the icon herself. Known for pushing boundaries, breaking barriers, and redefining what it means to be fearless, Grace Jones has never apologized for who she is, but now her own brother is publicly challenging the life she leads. In what many are calling a veiled but fiery spiritual rebuke, Pastor Noel Jones declared that while he still loves his sister, she is not walking in God's truth. So, was this a desperate plea for her soul, or a public condemnation wrapped in scripture? Has Grace responded? And what does this public clash say about the fragile line between family, faith, and fame? Today, we're diving deep into this explosive moment, one that's forcing both the church and pop culture to confront the messy, painful truth of when blood and belief collide. From the startling remarks made by Pastor Jones, the lengthy history between him and Grace, and the fundamental conflict between fame and faith, you won't believe the behind-the-scenes information we discovered, I promise. So fasten your seatbelts, for we are about to unveil a family drama with global ramifications, where bravery, faith, and blood clash on the global stage. At the City of Refuge Church in Gardena, California, it all started with what appeared to be a typical Sunday morning sermon. Pastor Noel Jones had arrived on stage in his typical flamboyant demeanor. He held a Bible in one hand, spoke with conviction, and had that distinct tone that made it clear to the audience that he wasn't there to perform. However, things took a startling turn halfway between the spirit and the text. Pastor Jones's discussion of the perils of celebrity culture, moral lapses, and what he called living for the applause of man rather than the approval of God caught the attention of both church witnesses and a number of live stream watchers. Just because your blood doesn't mean you're exempt, he added, his words becoming more piercing and intimate. The congregation reportedly fell silent, and even though he didn't mention Grace's name directly, everyone knew exactly who he was referring to. The choir remained silent, the cameras didn't zoom in, and even the church mothers reportedly looked down at their hands. I have family members, close family, who have rejected the ways of righteousness for the ways of fame, and they know exactly who they are. But she chose the world, glamour, seduction, and rebellion, he added, despite having been raised in the truth and holiness. She came to represent everything the church forbids. The sentence that has gone viral on social media is, and even though I love her, I cannot co-sign sin, even when it runs through my own blood. Boom. The moment created so much buzz that, within hours, Noel Jones versus Grace Jones was trending in a number of gospel and entertainment Twitter circles. Clips of that moment have been reposted across gospel blogs, celebrity news sites, and even TikTok, where users are reacting with shock, confusion, and heated debate. Commentaries such as "Did Pastor Jones just call out his sister on live stream?" started to circulate alongside screenshots of their family history. Is it a betrayal of family or a bold truth? Whoa, Grace Jones wasn't worthy of that. Or did she? According to reports, many churchgoers were left feeling torn. Some commended the bishop for his courage and for abiding by his convictions despite his familial ties. But others wondered if this was a time for individual correction rather than a public censure. "We love Pastor Jones, but I think this went a little too far," a lifelong churchgoer said on a gospel podcast. "That's his sister, and even if she's lost, you don't put family on blast like that. The world is watching." Others took a different stance, with one well-known commenter writing, "YLL always say you want truth until it hits your favorite celebrity." Pastor Jones remained honest, calling sin, even when it came from his own household. However, the question still stands: what prompted Pastor N. Jones to finally speak out after years of silence? What occurred just a few days prior to his sermon? Grace Jones is directly linked to a contentious public appearance that made headlines. But here's the twist: they claim it wasn't just about fame, but also about church mockery, and that's when things got personal. Although Pastor Noel Jones didn't name anyone in his sermon, observers and insiders believe Grace Jones's stunning appearance at a recent high-profile European fashion event was the tipping point. Grace Jones, still fierce at 76, walked the red carpet wearing a controversial ensemble that critics say was a twisted parody of church attire. The 2025 Paris Avant-Garde Gala was a bold and provocative showcase of couture and performance art that attracted international attention, not only for its extravagance, but also for its symbolism that many Christians found deeply disturbing. The fashion industry described Grace's performance as iconic, daring, and pure grace. Picture Bishop's mitre hat, dark latex robes, a staff in hand, and backup dancers wearing nun-pired bodysuits. Grace reportedly performed a version of her hit Corporate Cannibal on stage, accompanied by religious overtones and visual projections depicting burning and melting crosses. A lot of people think that this performance was the last straw for Pastor Noel Jones, especially since the video from the gala was widely shared among his church community just days before his explosive sermon. However, the Christian community was not so impressed. Social media was ablaze with outrage. "This is blasphemy disguised as art. Grace Jones is making fun of the church. Why is she continuously disparaging Christianity while her own brother is a pastor?" People were tagging the church. An unidentified member of the City of Refugees media team posted, requesting that the bishop speak up by tagging him. They were sharing snippets of Grace's performance, along with satirical remarks. "I believe he felt compelled to confront it at last, even if it meant launching the family business." Remember, this is not the first time Grace Jones has dabbled in religion and controversy. Her reputation has been based on shock value for decades, fusing religious imagery with themes of sexuality, revolt, and performance art. She has portrayed herself as a deity, a priestess, and even a crucified person in a music video. However, it now hits in a different way since Grace's actions go viral in the hyper-connected world of today. Additionally, all of Noel's teachings are snipped, shared, and analyzed. Once private, the boundary between their worlds is now public property. Despite being siblings, Grace and Noel provide another level of complexity. Their father, a fiery, no-nonsense bishop renowned for his heavy hand and old-school dogma, ruled over them as they grew up in a strict Pentecostal Jamaican home. Grace objected. Noel went on to become a preacher of the following generation. Grace has alluded to spiritual trauma and characterized her upbringing as harsh in previous interviews. Noel, on the other hand, has hardly ever discussed his sister in public until recently. She famously remarked, "Church tried to make me small, so I became larger than life." And a lot of people think he's dealing with the intense, unresolved grief of seeing someone he loves reject everything he centered his life around, rather than just her artistic decisions. This is how one gospel blogger explained it. "It's not merely a spiritual problem. It's intimate. It is a generational issue. It's traumatic. This is a man of God attempting to keep his congregation from being dragged into the circus of celebrity rebellion, and it is a brother pleading for his sister's soul." However, was that type of confrontation appropriate for the pulpit? Or has Nell come to believe that he still controls the story exclusively in the church? This is where the situation becomes even more intricate, since Grace could be preparing to reply. Yes, a person familiar with the Jones family claims that Grace is aware of the sermon and is not taking it lightly. Indeed, her alleged remarks spoken behind closed doors are enough to rock the table once more. Before the internet had a chance to calm down, Rumors started circulating that Grace Jones had already heard about her brother's speech. Insiders close to the Jones family also claimed that she wasn't quiet about it at all. If you know Grace Beverly Jones, you are aware that she is not the kind to back down from conflict, particularly when it involves her independence, her art, or her character. She has confronted the media, critics, religious establishments, and the fashion industry as a whole, and she has always come out stronger. She supposedly had some words of her own when she learned that Pastor Noel Jones had reprimanded her indirectly from the pulpit. In an interview with a UK entertainment tabloid, the singer's unnamed pal claimed that Grace was enraged, not sad or perplexed, simply enraged. "My brother can preach to his flock, but he's not my judge," she informed us. The secret of Grace's worldview is honesty over hypocrisy. "I've lived 1,000 lives, and I never once pretended to be a saint, but I've always been honest." Grace has made a career out of disobeying spiritual norms, whereas Noel adheres to them. She has been commended for leading an unrepentant life, but it is now impossible to overlook how that unrepentant life conflicts with her brother's holy calling. According to some sources, Grace is even thinking of publicly addressing religious criticism in a new music performance, or, even more startlingly, in a broadcast interview. Even the words to a demo song purportedly called Bloodline, in which she sings, "They preach love but serve control," were published by one blog. If this is accurate, it would be the first time Grace Jones has discussed her relationship with N openly. "They call it God, but it's fear they sold. I flew from chains, not run. My brother prays while throwing flames." Jones in any kind of art or music, an action that would surely rekindle hostilities between their respective audiences as well as amongst siblings. However, Grace's purported reaction went beyond music. Grace has held herself with more dignity in this industry than half of the preachers in suits. According to a tweet from one of her stylists that went viral very quickly, "You don't get to claim family only when it fits your sermon." It was a sensitive remark. Many fans started to wonder if Noel's call-out was motivated by judgment or by a sense of godly compassion, disguised as morality. The discussion swiftly turned into a more extensive argument. Can the church offer criticism without passing judgment? Is it ever appropriate to chastise a sibling in public? Is this about domineering women who don't fit the stereotype? Or is it actually about grace? Let's be truthful. Grace Jones has long been a symbol of unbridled individualism, independence, and revolt. Long before there were hashtags, she made it through the press, the industry, and cultural conflicts. She is currently being judged by her own relatives, and not just any relative, but one of the nation's most influential pastors. The worst part is that this goes beyond a simple sibling dispute. One brother represents regimented faith, while the other represents unrestrained expression, creating a collision of worlds, and neither seem prepared to give up. Here's the twist though, not just Grace's admirers are supporting her. Progressive theologians and pastors are joining the debate, supporting her right to free speech and denouncing what they perceive to be religious humiliation masquerading as holiness. A well-known internet faith leader once tweeted, "Grace Jones may not be your kind of Christian, but she's honest about it. Some of you act like Christians on Sundays, then commit sins on Mondays." Others, on the other hand, are supporting Noel, hailing him as the Ezekiel of his generation for his fearless stand for truth and for warning the populace even when it is painful. Now what? One thing is evident as church leaders rush to contain the consequences and Grace reportedly starts to formulate her answer. Millions of people are watching this family drama unfold, and it is far from over. Another factor could completely change the course of events, because Grace and Noel's childhood pal recently came forward with information that may help explain the real cause of their strained relationship and the reasons why this rivalry may have been developing for decades. You had to travel all the way back to Spanish Town, Jamaica, before the media headlines, before the pulpits and stages, and back to a childhood enmeshed in both holiness and oppressive control, in order to fully comprehend what is transpiring between Pastor Noel Jones and his sister Grace Jones. "They call it God, but it's fear they sold. I flew from chains, not run. My brother prays while throwing flames." Jones in any kind of art or music, an action that would surely rekindle hostilities between their respective audiences as well as amongst siblings. However, Grace's purported reaction went beyond music. Grace has held herself with more dignity in this industry than half of the preachers in suits. According to a tweet from one of her stylists that went viral very quickly, "You don't get to claim family only when it fits your sermon." It was a sensitive remark. Many fans started to wonder if Noel's call-out was motivated by judgment or by a sense of godly compassion, disguised as morality. The discussion swiftly turned into a more extensive argument. Can the church offer criticism without passing judgment? Is it ever appropriate to chastise a sibling in public? Is this about domineering women who don't fit the stereotype? Or is it actually about grace? Let's be truthful. Grace Jones has long been a symbol of unbridled individualism, independence, and revolt. Long before there were hashtags, she made it through the press, the industry, and cultural conflicts. She is currently being judged by her own relatives, and not just any relative, but one of the nation's most influential pastors. The worst part is that this goes beyond a simple sibling dispute. One brother represents regimented faith, while the other represents unrestrained expression, creating a collision of worlds, and neither seem prepared to give up. Here's the twist though, not just Grace's admirers are supporting her. Progressive theologians and pastors are joining the debate, supporting her right to free speech and denouncing what they perceive to be religious humiliation masquerading as holiness. A well-known internet faith leader once tweeted, "Grace Jones may not be your kind of Christian, but she's honest about it. Some of you act like Christians on Sundays, then commit sins on Mondays." Others, on the other hand, are supporting Noel, hailing him as the Ezekiel of his generation for his fearless stand for truth and for warning the populace even when it is painful. Now what? One thing is evident as church leaders rush to contain the consequences and Grace reportedly starts to formulate her answer. Millions of people are watching this family drama unfold, and it is far from over. Another factor could completely change the course of events, because Grace and Noel's childhood pal recently came forward with information that may help explain the real cause of their strained relationship and the reasons why this rivalry may have been developing for decades. You had to travel all the way back to Spanish Town, Jamaica, before the media headlines, before the pulpits and stages, and back to a childhood enmeshed in both holiness and oppressive control, in order to fully comprehend what is transpiring between Pastor Noel Jones and his sister Grace Jones. What's even more tragic is that, despite growing up in the same home, Grace and Noel adopted diametrically opposed worldviews in order to endure it. One turned to religion, while the other turned away. With the world watching, their unspoken wounds are now turning into a spoken war. But the damage isn't limited to the two of them anymore. Their conflict has spread into the public arena, drawing in fans, churchgoers, gospel leaders, and even non-religious celebrities. One sought power from the pulpit, the other from the stage. Pastor Noel was correct to voice his opinions. Just last week, a video compilation called Grace Jones vs. Pastor Noel Jones, The Family Divide, went viral on YouTube and X, with over 3 million views in just 48 hours. The comment area was full of opposing viewpoints. Grace is a legend, let her live. And here's where it gets even more intense. Rumors are now circulating that a documentary producer has approached the family about developing a limited documentary series that would explore the Jones legacy, the spiritual tension, and how fame, faith, and family identity shape two of the most divisive figures in contemporary culture. Silence is agreement with sin. They both need therapy. This is trauma, not theology. For better or worse, the collision between Pastor Noel Jones and Grace Jones is more than just a personal dispute. Whether or not that project continues is still up in the air. But one thing is certain, the public has not moved on. In fact, they are digging deeper than ever before. What happens next could redefine both of their legacies. Two powerful worlds, the Black church and Black artistry, are being shaken by a public debate. The boundaries between accountability, judgment, grace, and exposure have never felt more hazy. And now the church is being forced to respond to a question it has long evaded. What happens when spiritual correction turns into public humiliation? Gospel leaders and believers are voicing their opinions across pulpits, pews, and platforms, and they are sharply divided. Bishop C.L. Reynolds, a prominent conservative figure in the Pentecostal community, wrote on his Facebook page, "The Bible says to cry aloud and spare not, even when it's family." Pastor Noel Jones did what too many spiritual leaders are afraid to do, and some prominent pastors have praised him for finally drawing a line in the sand. However, younger progressive preachers are fiercely retaliating. Pastor Dana Evans of Atlanta stated live on Instagram, "Public correction is not always God's way. Stand for holiness, not popularity. With a microphone and a camera, you can't win your family over. You win them over with kind advice and compassion." There was no sermon there. That was a performance. Gospel artists are also feeling the heat. Several singers who've previously collaborated with Pastor Noel are now being asked to choose a side. Should they publicly support his decision to call out grace, or remain neutral and risk backlash from their fan bases? One anonymous gospel artist told a Christian culture outlet, "It's tricky. Pastor Noel is someone I adore. Fans of Grace Jones, particularly those in the fashion, music, and LGBTQ+ communities, are criticizing what they perceive to be religious bullying masquerading as holiness. I love Grace, too," she said, "but now, anything I say will be interpreted as an endorsement or rejection of one of them. This is becoming a media circus." According to a widely shared tweet by an LGBT fashion influencer, "It's always the holiest ones who tear down their own family in front of strangers." Many people think Noel's sermon was a calculated public censure intended to silence or embarrass his sister, rather than a compassionate call to repentance. No Sunday sermon can compare to what Grace Jones has done for self-love and liberation. Now, since this is about more than simply a brother and sister, this is where the true tension resides. It concerns the conflict between tradition and revolt, religion and expression, and creativity and control. Is it ever appropriate to chastise your own blood in front of the world? Some people are asking, does calling out sin in public truly lead to change or just more division? Furthermore, are well-known people like Grace Jones even expected to uphold the moral principles of the church they left behind? Pastors are being asked for advice by churchgoers. Gospel music on radio stations are focusing on the subject for their entire call-in show. Additionally, TikTok preachers are now breaking down Pastor Jones's speech into its individual sentences, just like theologians do with the Bible. There's more, though. The repercussions are also being felt by the City of Refuge Church. According to reports, attendance has increased. Some are drawn to Pastor Jones's audacity, not merely out of curiosity, but some are quietly leaving. As one long-standing member wrote on X, "I came for healing, not drama." This isn't the spirit of restoration. Even though we adore Bishop Noel, it feels like TMZ has taken over a church. There are also rumors that Noel's leadership team is divided. According to some, his message was spiritual. Others allegedly forewarned him in advance not to include family members in the speech, arguing that doing so might spark a media frenzy. And keep in mind that controversy is nothing new to Noel Jones. This is the same man who, for once, starred in the reality TV program Preachers of Law, where his extravagant lifestyle provoked controversy, and who endured years of criticism for postponing marriage to his longtime companion. Therefore, many people find it hypocritical that he is now criticizing Grace for her way of life. For some, this is just what the church needs, while for others, as one online critic put it, the pot has called the glitter-covered kettle black. A wake-up call, a reckoning, a return to reality, irrespective of public opinion or popularity. This is how a popular tweet summed it up. Repentance is what Noel Jones is preaching. Grace Jones is rebelling. In contrast to Saturday Night Fever, the Globe is watching as if it were a Sunday sermon.